Welcome back into the Dead Arm Sports Podcast. Josh and Jill coming at you live on a Tuesday. That's right. We are
Club
live
is
as
going
usual.
up
Yes, sir. You can
on a
check us out
Tuesday.
on YouTube. We'll answer any questions in the chat. But if you're listening to this on Apple, Spotify, any of these other listening platforms, you done messed up again. You need to get into the live feed so you can ask us questions. Speaking of questions,
We need them.
Jill.
We need them.
I got one for you. Our question of the day today. I was at the Milwaukee Brewer game over the weekend. They beat the Rockies 9-4. Pretty entertaining game, but I want to know what is going on with Christian Yelich. He is not doing that great. And I've never seen, he obviously was a crowd favorite from the time he came over from the Miami Marlins. And there's people booing when he was striking out. If you think his first three at bats were a strikeout before he finally had an RBI single, I think later on in the game. But yeah, what's going on with Christian?
Yeah, he just hasn't been the same since he busted his knee on a foul ball, fastball in. He fouled it straight off his kneecap, shattered his knee, and he just hasn't been the same player since. I was less worried about it back when he first came back from that injury. It was the pandemic season, 60-game season, came back, was not very sharp, but I blamed it on the pandemic. And just the weird schedule for everybody, having a spring training and then COVID hits, and then having to have you sit out for a couple months and then have to have another spring training and then just a short schedule, etc. So I didn't really worry about his performance too much then. It was a weird year for everybody. But then last year, first full season back, and I thought that he'd return back to the player that he was, and he's shown some flashes that he could, or he showed some flashes last year that he could, but never really did. And this season, they're not even using him as a 3-hitter anymore. They bumped him up to leadoff because he has no pop.
DH, yep,
and a DH, yeah, and he's got no pop. It's hard to pinpoint exactly what it is, but it just doesn't have that dynamic look. With a power hitter, it generally makes a kind of a different sound off the bat when you got somebody that's a true power hitter like that. And he just hasn't gotten back to that level of a player. And it's disturbing because he just got that massive extension not too long ago. And I believe it was an 8-year extension. And yeah, that's not looking good right now. Cause the Brewers, as we all know, not one of the high bidders, high payers out there, especially when it comes to free agency. So a lot of the times they end up relying on extending their players early, trying to get them at a little bit of a discount. Brewers just signed Aaron Ashby to a 5-year deal with 2 years of club option after this. Got him at about, what was it? Somewhere around 20 to 25 million a year, similar to the total, similar to the Freddie Peralta deal that they made, which that deal has so far worked out great. What they do is give buyout a couple years of free agency by giving these players an extension earlier, so rather than waiting until arbitration, they become a free agent. So they tried the same thing with Yelich at the time. I was very happy with the deal, thinking
it was pretty team friendly too. It was a good deal for both sides
for sure. So especially coming off of, he had won the MVP, he finished third the next year, and then they gave him that extension. It's like, seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Of course, then he busts up his knee, and he's just never been the same. I don't know if he can't turn on the ball the same. He's not planting the same, because it's his plant leg. And, Yelich has a pretty decent leg kick before he swings. So I wonder if he can't plant and rotate on the knee the same. So he doesn't have that same torque. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but just hasn't been the same player. And you don't want to be paying almost $30 million a year for a guy that's going to be an average leadoff hitter and not as great in the field as he was back. He back with the Marlins, he won a couple Gold Gloves in left field. He's not the same defender as he used to be, which that generally happens with age, but he's not stealing bases at the same rate. He's certainly not hitting for power at all anymore. And I mean, what is he hitting? 260 probably from the leadoff spot with minimal pop.
Yeah.
It's not what you can have out of a player that you were expecting to fill the Ryan Braun role, really.
Yeah,
that
Braun
did fill for so many years.
Ryan Braun right now too. At post, obviously, Yelich wasn't involved in the steroid scandal like
we assume
Ryan Braun was. We assume, but that's kind of the same thing with Ryan Braun. After he got busted and had to sit out for a while, you just saw that slow decline,
and that was an issue for 3-4 years until the end of his contract.
Yeah.
So Yelich has another 6 or 7 on it. So hopefully,
maybe.
Yeah, maybe. I think it's through 2028, I think. So yikes, he's got to really get it going. Otherwise, this is going to be a tough, otherwise the Brewers will have met their ceiling, which they're right now. It's they've never made the World Series. If Yelich isn't the same player that he was back then, I don't see how they can make a World Series. And that'll be disappointing from a team that is this dominant between the rotation and their bullpen. I mean, they've got a legitimate, relatively shut down combo at the back end of the back end of the bullpen with Boxberger, Devin Williams, and Josh Hader as their 7, 8, 9, 7th, 8th, 9th inning guys. And so obviously Corbin Burns, he's still in the running there for Cy Young, probably a top 3 NL Cy Young candidate right now. And then Brandon Woodruff, after he got back from his injury, he's been stellar ever since. Again, Freddie Peralta's been injured, but he was great last year. He's coming back soon. Eric Lauers started off the season great, and he's kind of trickled off a little bit, but still a startable type of a player. And, the healthier that rotation gets, the stronger it'll become. And so just got to get that offense going. Can't have a $30 million, nearly $30 million average leadoff hitter. That's just not going to cut it. He's got to turn back into that 3 hitter that when he was dominant.
Yeah. No, I appreciate the insight. I was just, like I said, I went to the game and haven't been watching.
I can't believe he was getting booed. It was
you
don't
just
hear
like
that from a Milwaukee crowd very often.
That, and then he, like I said, he had an RBI single later on in the game when it was pretty much out of hand. I mean, I think the Brewers put up, 5 runs in the 7th inning, I want to say, and it was like the sarcastic cheers from the crowd because like I said, he struck out his first 3 times up.
Yeah.
So, and I don't even think he made contact. I mean, they were ugly swings. That's why I was just like, they really stood out to me, and that's why I was just curious on your take and insight on that, because I mean, he arguably had one of the most dominant streaks in the last 5-6 years. When
in those 2 years that
you couldn't get him out.
He was tremendous in 18 and 19, and it's too bad that obviously the assumption is that he was going to continue with that, and we'll see if it turns around, but it's not looking great.
Yep. We can be found at Dead Arm Sports, Twitter, Instagram. Search us out on Facebook. Type in Dead Arm Sports into that search bar. It'll be the first thing that pops up. Again, we are live on YouTube in the beginning of the week. Typically on Mondays, Jill and I have both been feeling a little under the weather the last couple of weeks. So a little bit different recording schedule, but hey, it's summer vacation for a lot of us, so ramping up for the rest of the season. But again, if you subscribe and click the bell on YouTube, you'll know when we go live. Ding, there it is. So you can jump on, ask us any questions, and we monitor the chat the whole time. So ask us anything if you want clarification on something we said during that episode, or else if you have a question about any of the topics or anything not related to what we're talking about, we're more than happy to stop and answer the question. So we, like Jell said, we love questions, so keep them coming our way. You want to follow Jell on socials, he can be found at DasJel, that's at DASJEL. I can be found at DasJPEC, that's at DASJPEC. And again, you can send us any questions there. Drafts are happening and you're going to be starting up shortly. So if you're in the middle of your draft, Jill and I usually have our phones by us. You can send us a quick message and we can definitely help you out during your draft if you want to, or else just shout us out, DM, or just tweet at us. So otherwise, yeah, we can be found on some of our listening platforms, Apple, Spotify, Anchor, hardly know her, not an anchor on a boat, but anchor on your web. You can use it while on a boat, but no, Joe,
I'm going fast, Dan.
sipping on anything fun today, or you got the old light beer going again?
No, it's not even that. It's just the old H2O today.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, still in a little bit of recovery mode. So
rough weekend.
Huh?
Rough weekend?
No, unfortunately, I don't know if I caught something. It was, a little 36-hour bug, not feeling great. So just trying to hydrate and get back to 100%.
Nice. I am drinking a Truly watermelon lemonade. So found one of those in the back of the fridge. Not sure when those were purchased. So hopefully it doesn't make me sick, but
initial review,
we'll roll with it. Pretty solid. It's refreshing.
Yeah.
I don't know that I could drink a ton of them. Pretty sweet, but
yeah, most of those Trulies are pretty sweet.
It
seems like
not
the Trulies are a little
the
sweeter than like a White Claw or some of the other seltzers.
Definitely not as sweet as the fruit punches that we were rocking when I was down there, but
those are definitely
still pretty sweet.
Yeah.
All right, it's got a probably a pretty shorter episode today. We'll see, though. You know how we like to stretch out some topics, get into some other tangents. But we got 3M recap for you today. Have some NFL news with teams reporting to training camp today. Some reported last week, but all of the rest of them, everyone reported today. Then we got the AFC North fantasy preview for you. So we're going to be talking everything AFC North for you today. We're hoping to have some Deshaun Watson news, but that has not come out yet. So
I can't believe it's taking this long.
It's pretty insane.
We were talking like a month ago that we expect it to be done really quick right after his hearing. And his hearing was, it was over a month ago with, I believe, with Sue Robinson. So I don't know what's taking this long. Maybe, I don't know. I guess obviously still reviewing all the facts and all the cases from all the women and the cases and, the case that he made himself. So it's just amazing that it's taking this long. Did not expect this at all.
No, not at all. But I'll kick it off with that 3M Open recap in Blaine, Minnesota, TPC Twin Cities. And I guess the story there is Piercy just kind of fell apart on
himself.
Sunday. Yeah, not great. And the beneficiary of that was Tony Finau. So congrats, Tony. I think that was his third career win.
It's first in a while.
First in a while, but yeah. So it was nice to see him up on the leaderboard. Any other takeaways from this, Joe? Not the strongest of fields. And again, this week on Thursday, we'll get into the Rocket Mortgage Classic, which again, not the strongest of fields as guys kind of rest for that final playoff push for the FedEx Cup. But any takeaways from the weekend?
Yeah, it's like you said, Scott Piercy shitting himself, but Finau also finishing on Sunday 4 birdies on the back 9 to kind of help seal the deal, along with Piercy, in combo with Piercy's shitting of the bed. So pretty nice little chunk of change, 1.35 mil. I'll take that if I'm Tony. And
yeah.
But yeah,
it's no live money, but
no, kind of a fun fact, largest final round comeback in 3M Open history. Obviously that's he only shot a 4 under Sunday. So,
I was also going to say, I think
Piercy.
This is the third year of the tournament too. So
that's a good point.
Not a lot of sample size there, but
third career win for him. So he jumps into the top 20 in the FedEx Cup standings. So he could, end up making the President's Cup team for the United States. He's now into contention for that, or into he's now, I guess, eligible for it. So he's jumping up there, and maybe We'll see if he ends up on the U.S. team, but good for Tony. He deserves a win. He played pretty well the previous week, and at the he's had a few rounds a few tournaments this year where he's been kind of there, hovering there, and then shits himself for one round and takes himself out of contention. So good for him for holding it down for the entire tournament. But other takeaway from this, our picks of Sahith Theegala and
Not
Davis
great, Bob.
Riley, woof, both
great.
missing the cut.
Yes, you did get 2 strokes on me. I think you had I finished +4, you were at +2, is that correct?
Yep.
So
yikes.
yeah, not great. Yeah, as soon as I put Sahith in there, and then I was watching the first round and just he couldn't string anything together, I was like, I probably shouldn't have picked somebody that's coming off of a made cut at the British Open that had some jet lag, I'm sure, going into this
probably
past
did.
week. So that ideally wasn't the best pick from me, but again, there wasn't a lot to choose from.
It wasn't a great field. I mean, with taking Riley, I've seen him, he's got the talent to get it done someday. He's just, I don't know. This is the thing with like some of these lower end golfers, that what makes the greats great is that they can do it week in and week out. And Davis Riley's not at that point. So, he's had some tournaments where he's been money, but hasn't been able to get it done yet. So, but maybe he will, maybe he will in some future tournament this year, but he's going to be a name. I think both these guys are a name for the future that we can keep an eye on. They're both super young still, Theegala and Davis Riley. So definitely names to keep an eye on going forward, but they're just not there yet.
Yep. Guys that were names to keep an eye on and are probably past their prime moving into the NFL. Julio Jones is now a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. So also got news from Tampa Bay. We'll just kind of lump this one in since it's in the wide receiver group. Chris Godwin has been cleared for training camp. So obviously tore his ACL late in the season last year, and his progress was good enough that he should be out there for week 1. So not going to see him missing any time. Obviously, big boost to Tom Brady. We talked about him a little bit last week. Still high on Mike Evans, but where do you see Julio fitting in with this offense? I mean, to me, the only thing I have to say about it is RIP Russell Gage. I mean,
I was literally gonna say, like, we just, we just touched on
Russell Gage
that division, and that was one of the players that we specifically touched on before. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. We saw Julio in the 10 games that he did play last year, under 500 yards, only 1 touchdown. I mean, he's an average receiver at best right now. Is he draftable in fantasy? I struggle to say yes in this because you're going to have Mike Evans, who is going to get his 1,000 yards and close to double-digit touchdowns. You've got Chris Godwin, who I'm shocked is back as early as he is. I guess, I mean, players, they're recovering from ACLs a lot quicker than they used to, but that's pretty tremendous progress to be able to make in just a few months. So Julio fits in there as their wide receiver 3. Yeah, that's maybe playable in a Brady offense, maybe draftable, but I'm kind of over Julio at this point. He's a name. He's maybe the top receiver over the last 10 years. You can make that argument, but he's not this year. I don't know what I'd do with him. I'm not probably going to even touch him in drafts.
Yeah, I don't think I will either. And I mean, if you're one of those that's like, oh no, it's Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Antonio Brown was relevant for a while last year before he had his meltdown. So Tom Brady is capable of supporting 3 wide receivers, but we just haven't seen Julio be able to stay on the field for a full season in a long time. He's missed a good chunk of games. Like you said, he missed 7 games last year. I believe he missed 7 the year before that too. And he just hasn't really looked the same. I mean, this is the age where you start seeing those wide receivers dropping off a ton. So I don't think I'm going to target him anywhere in the draft. I think even if he was in the later rounds to take a flyer, I think I'd rather take a flyer on somebody a little bit younger that
Yeah,
maybe has a little bit more upside.
me
I don't
too.
think you're ever going to be comfortable putting Julio into your lineup.
As far as, relevance on the field, just in terms of football, overall football, yeah, hopefully, could be one additional red zone weapon. Obviously, losing Gronk, that was one of Brady's biggest red zone weapons. So maybe Julio can kind of fit into that, that type of a role that Gronk had, at least within the red zone. But middle of the field, I'm not interested. I don't think he'll be playing that much. I think he is going to function mostly as, a red zone target. So him and Mike Evans, both massive red zone targets, but I'm not. Maybe Julio can finally start getting into the end zone, which has been something he somehow has struggled with, especially, with the Falcons, 4 touchdowns, 1,800-yard seasons, like with only a few touchdowns. But yeah, RIP Russell Gage indeed. Poor guy.
Yeah, and who knows? I mean, if Julio does get hurt, which there's a good chance of, maybe we'll see a little bit of Russell Gage action, but
it's crazy. We were thinking of Russell Gage. At least he was probably expecting to start the season as the wide receiver too.
Yeah.
And now he's Godwin, the wide receiver 4 at best. Yeah. I mean, Tyler Johnson's still there too. So
was it Scotty Reynolds or not Scotty Reynolds?
Scotty Miller.
Yep.
Scotty doesn't know. Rashad Perriman's there too. What the hell?
Yeah. They got a full wide receiver room.
Loaded.
Yep. Moving across the country up to the hashtag PNW, got news today. Chris Carson is hanging up the cleat. So congrats to a fine career, Mr. Chris Carson. And yeah, that neck injury, we had talked about it a little bit earlier on in the offseason. We were talking Ken Walker and Rashad Penny and yeah, Chris Carson, we just didn't see it happening. It's too big of a risk when you have a neck injury like that. I mean, one hit and could end up being paralyzed, or it's not worth the risk there. So wish him all the best.
I mean, Prince Fielder had a neck injury that ended his baseball career. So that's baseball. That's not a contact sport where it's people flying at as fast as they can, 280-pound guys running a 4.4 directly at you at the most physical position, at least offensively, in the game. So no, I'm, like you said, he was, congrats on a career that he has to be happy with. He was a 7th round pick. Wasn't, certainly when he got a 7th round, you take a 7th round pick. That's kind of a flyer, hope for something, and made it a pretty good career. So made himself a few, decent chunk of change, and then, enough to, make his name. He was a relevant back, and that's what you can ask for out of a 7th round pick. So congrats to him. And it's officially the Ken Walker and
Rashad Penny
show.
What about DJ Dallas?
DJ Jelly Gel. DJ Dallas.
Moving into the AFC North. So it is North week here on the Dead Arm Sports Podcast. Going to hit the NFC side of things on Thursday, but again, kicking it off with the AFC North, and pretty excited to talk about this division. A lot of great fantasy options here and guys that I think we could have a pretty good discussion on as well. So I'll kick it off. Let's start with Cincinnati, Gel. And
we're on to Cincinnati.
Coming off of loss in the Super Bowl, defending AFC champions. So Joe Burrow, Joe Mixon, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, those are guys I am targeting in my drafts. I think they're going to be phenomenal for fantasy this year. Curious on where you sit with Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd's somebody that I feel like discussed last year at length. I think you and Rick, or at least Rick, was pretty high on Tyler Boyd at the time. I've never really been a huge Tyler Boyd guy, and I'm not again this year. Any interest there, taking him later rounds to see? I mean, it should be a pretty high flying offense, but again, I just don't know if he's going to be that relevant for fantasy.
It's just so hard there when it's Jamar Chase and T. Higgins that are going to be getting the bulk of those passing work, and also Joe Mixon, who gets himself a decent amount of targets. Yeah. I mean, I think that it's tough to say yes draft. it'd have to be for me, it'd have to be a very late round type of a guy. I mean, I'm taking a guy like, I guess I'm taking a guy probably like a Michael Gallup over him. Even though Gallup is still dealing with injuries, I think the upside on Gallup is higher than on Tyler Boyd. So yeah, I mean, he's got, he's going to be productive when he's if he gets the opportunity on the field, but you're going to need a T Higgins injury or a Jamar Chase injury for him to see significant enough playing time. If one of those two dudes does go down and he's out there on waivers, he has to be a priority pickup. Absolutely. But I mean, 12-team league. Yeah, I could see myself taking him, but again, this has to be a super late pick for me. And don't rely on him. Don't think of him as something that you can really plug in as a starter. Certainly.
Yeah. We saw some success with CJ Uzoma last year. Obviously, he's moved on to the New York Jets, and in comes Hayden Hurst, who he's always had a little bit of hype to him. He obviously was on Baltimore behind Mark Andrews. We'll talk about Baltimore here in a little bit. Moved down to Atlanta and didn't have a ton of success there. Kyle Pitts comes in. Hayden Hurst gets pushed to the back and now gets a fresh start, starting tight end in Cincinnati. Again, CJ Uzoma had a little bit of fantasy success last year. You could start him here and there, and he was pretty productive for you. Do you see a rejuvenation from Hayden Hurst here at all? Is he fantasy relevant? Is he somebody that you see maybe you could start here and there, or are you not touching him at all?
I would rather leave him as, I can't be super high on him. I'd rather stream him, hopefully end up with a better higher end tight end, and maybe he's a streaming option for bye weeks, but I don't, personally, I'm not going to draft him. Uzoma did have, he did have his fair share, especially later on in the season, of productive weeks, but most of that was tied strictly to touchdowns.
Yeah.
And we said this last year, maybe, and we were spot on with Robert Tonyan, with Tonyan going from, being a super touchdown reliant tight end. It's hard for that tight end to keep doing that year after year after year. So Hayden Hurst comes in and fills that Uzoma role. Is he going to still get the same amount of red zone targets that Uzoma did? Or Hurst comes in. Is he going to get that same number of red zone targets that Uzoma did last year? Hard for me to say yes. So I like to leave him as, maybe watch him as a streaming option when your starting tight end is on a bye, but I don't think I want to draft him.
So, any other fantasy relevant guys you want to touch on with Cincinnati? I mean, Joe Mixon's obviously your 3-down back. Should maybe see a little Chris Evans. We had talked about him last year, but I don't think he's anything more than a stash in a dynasty league, but I don't see redraft purposes. I don't think he's going to step in and be a 3-down back if Joe Mixon comes out and gets hurt. So I don't know that there's much relevance there.
Don't think so at all. No, I guess the only other like kind of piece of news that came out today, we're recording live on a Tuesday, is that Burrow and the Bengals are looking to get an extension done with Burrow already. So he's only 2 years in and they're already into extension talks. That's pretty baller for Cincinnati to, they know that price is going to only continue to go up on Burrow. And if you think Burrow's the guy, just get the deal done and maybe save yourself $5 to $10 million a year if you can get a deal done early with him. So, him in combination with Jamar Chase, and it looks like that's going to be a long-term pairing. If you're drafting today in a dynasty league, who's your wide receiver one? Is it Justin Jefferson or is it Jamar Chase? Two LSU teammates.
Yeah, I don't think you could go wrong with either of them. I'd probably lean Jamar Chase just because I can't see Cincinnati letting Joe Burrow go. And I don't know what Minnesota is going to do once Kirk's gone. So long-term wise, I think Jamar Chase is a little bit safer there just because you know who the quarterback's going to be, but you can't go wrong with either one. I've
It's
got
tough to
Justin
say
Jefferson
who's
in Dynasty and absolutely love every minute of it. So
yeah. It's tough to say who's even the more talented player. I mean, Chase got drafted way higher, but Jefferson's been just an absolute monster since getting into the league. So, and was a monster at LSU with Burrow. So,
I thought the Joe Burrow news you're going to bring down that came out today was that he's going to have surgery to get his appendix removed.
Good for him. Get it done now.
Yes.
Don't want that exploding on the field.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's what usually in 1 month or so recovery. So he'll miss the little bit of training camp, but he'll be obviously ready week 1.
Oh yeah.
By, easily.
All right, so let's move to Pittsburgh. We'll talk about Pittsburgh a little bit. Obviously, Big Ben retiring in the offseason. It's a new quarterback situation there. Mitch Trubisky kissing titties and Kenny Pickett are going to battle it out for the starting job. Probably give a slight edge to Trubisky there, but again, it sounds like Pickett was looking good in mini camp, so we'll see what ends up happening there. Obviously, huge fantasy implications there in the wide receiver room. Still like Najee Harris this year. Deontay Johnson's a good PPR guy. I don't see that really going down. Nice safety blanket for either quarterback. And then I really like George Pickens. I liked him in college at Georgia, and I think he's going to be sneaky this year. I actually like him over Chase Claypool. Chase is on my guys I don't like, and he's just too boomer bust for me, and I don't see either Trubisky or Kenny Pickett being able to support 3 wide receivers. So I kind of kick Claypool as the odd man out. He's been
and so you have
the last couple of years.
Are you saying that you'd have Pickens? You'd rather have even
I'd
just
rather
for
wait
this year
a
and
few
redraft?
rounds. Yeah, I'd rather wait quite a few rounds and grab
and be
George
able to grab
Pickens. Yeah, than Claypool.
So Deontay Johnson's on the contract year.
Yep.
That generally results in additional targets because he's trying to have get paid.
Contract.
But on top of that, I mean, with him being on a contract year and with there being potential that he could dip out after this season, does that make you like Pickens even more in Dynasty? And that maybe Pickens, if he were to jump Claypool, or think about that, if he were to jump Claypool and he ends up being the de facto wide receiver 1 in Pittsburgh. I mean, how much, I mean, if especially Dynasty speaking, is that something that you can kind of, I wouldn't say bank on, but maybe target him for that reason and be willing to take him earlier than his current ADP? Yeah,
I think so. I think a lot of people right now probably look at him and see he's taken in the 3rd round and aren't as high on him. But you and I both know, I mean, we obviously are in a Dynasty college football league and follow college football very closely. George Pickens would have been a 1st round wide receiver this year had he played the full last season. He was recovering from a torn ACL, didn't get back till late in the season, and wasn't really, I mean, he was out there, but I still don't think he was at full strength for the college football playoff, but still played phenomenal and had some amazing catches. And he's great in deep routes, great with his route running. So no, I really like George Pickens for the long term. And I think he's going to be that next up that we see from Pittsburgh. I mean, there hasn't been a year where there hasn't been a Pittsburgh wide receiver that finishes in the top 15, top 20 of fantasy football. They're
it's been
up there, and it's
death
taxes Pittsburgh wide receivers.
Pittsburgh's wide receivers and running backs. Now the running back, even when D'Angelo Williams was there, he had Rashard Mendenhall however long ago. Like, these guys were awesome. So there's usually at least one wide receiver as well. Next guy that I want to touch on, and this guy seems to be a lock to go, he's a round 1 lock, absolutely, is Najee Harris. But do you have any concern that he had 381 touches last season? Or do you think that that's what makes him a little bit more appealing, given that he's going to, his volume is going to be that high, but 381 touches in one season, 83rd most touches ever in a season of all time. That's a ton. That's a ton of work. And do you see there being maybe a fall off going into this season because of that workload last year?
I don't think there's necessarily going to be a fall off at all. I don't think he's going to get near as many touches. I think he's still going to be out there just as much, but I don't know if they're going to utilize him as much in the passing game. Big Ben was having trouble getting the ball down the field last year, so that was a huge check.
I mean, how many times
him.
did he throw it more than 8 yards down the field?
Yeah, which I mean, that's Najee Harris's bread and butter, catching balls out of the backfield and catching those short passes. So I look for either Kenny Pickett, Mitch Trubisky to get the ball down the field a little bit more. Whether they have success with that, that's still up in the air. But I don't think everything is going to be going through Najee as much as it was last year. Like I said, Big Ben just couldn't get the ball down the field at all. So they were forced to do some of those short checkdowns and hand the ball off a ton. But I mean, Pittsburgh historically, they like getting their running backs going, whether that's Lev Bell. I mean, look at all the years that Lev Bell is one of the top fantasy options. So I don't see Najee falling off at all this year. I think he's still going to be solid and worth a late first round pick.
Yeah, I mean, certainly worthy of the first round pick. You always wonder. I mean, reason I bring that up is we saw with Zeke, his rookie season, it was every other play where he was getting the ball, and we've seen it's been every season where his production has gone down. So I don't know if we can expect the same with Najee. Hopefully not, but realistic chance. They're both, that's what happens when you're out there every single play. You can wear down a little bit.
Yep. Last guy I want to talk about here on Pittsburgh before we jump over to Baltimore is a gentleman who came out strong his rookie year, was arguably just as good as Kyle Pitts, scored more touchdowns, that's for sure. Mr. Pat Freiermuth, tight end for Pittsburgh. And where do you see him this year? I mean, like I said, he had a pretty solid year for a rookie tight end. You don't see that very often. But again, Mitch Trubisky, Kenny Pickett. Do you think they're able to support Deontay, George Pickens, Claypool, and still make Pat Freiermuth relevant for tight end?
I've got Freiermuth as a tight end one. I'm comfortable starting him most weeks out of the year. At least that's where I sit now. Obviously, if things change, they change. But I've got him slotted as a tight end one right now. That I can. I mean, he's certainly not a Darren Waller plug and play on a weekly basis, but I see him finishing in the top 12. So therefore I put him in there as a tight end one.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have his ADP up in front of me right now, but definitely would be curious on that. I mean, what round would you be comfortable taking him in? I mean, you said top 12 tight end, but I mean, you get to the 12th tight end, and I mean, that's maybe what some of those guys, it's 400 yards and maybe 4 touchdowns or so. So that's not as ideal as maybe a top 3, top 4 guy.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to go crazy here and go, first round or anything, or not, obviously not first round, but an 8, tight end 12. I mean, 8th round, is that too early?
Yeah,
that's probably
more comfortable towards that 10th, I think, for me. Yeah. But if you want him, he probably is going to be going in that 8th, 9th round.
This is the thing, is like, it just depends how your draft falls.
Yeah.
And those top 5 tight ends of, between Kelsey, Andrews, Pitts, probably Kittle and Waller, those guys are going to be going probably pretty early, but there's certainly a drop off after that. So just see how your everything kind of ends up shaking out, I guess, on that side of the ball, or for that specific position. I'm not desperate for him, so I'm not going to reach for it, but I do see him as a top 12 tight end, I guess.
Sounds good.
10th round is probably appropriate. Yeah.
Moving on to Baltimore. Only a couple of guys I like. I think this is one that we probably will debate a little bit more, because I know you've got one of the guys I don't like on your dynasty team. Nothing against him. I I want to see it from Baltimore's offense first, but I've got guys I like. Lamar Jackson, obviously, he's up there with his rushing ability, has potential to be the quarterback one on the season. And Mark Andrews, I think he's going to have a phenomenal year too. He's been absolutely solid when Lamar's back there. Lamar's go-to guy. So those are two guys I'm targeting in my drafts. Guys I don't like. I don't know what to do with that backfield right now. J.K. Dobbins, we're not sure what his status is going to be. He came out and told Rappaport he's going to be ready for week one. We'll see what that looks like. But
yeah, I mean, he's currently on the PUP list.
Gus, it sounds like is going to be questionable for week one. And I don't know. Lamar runs the ball so much. We saw some success from J.K. Dobbins his rookie year, obviously out all of last year with that injury, but you targeting JK right now? I'm out on him. I think the Baltimore's offense is it scares the crap out of me, to be honest. It does. There's no other way around it.
I mean, am I out on him? No, but I mean, let's say you're looking at JK Dobbins versus a Travis Etienne and an AJ Dillon. How are you on with those three guys? I mean,
in that situation, I'd take JK. We just got news that it sounds like James Robinson somehow from his Achilles is going to be ready for week one. So
what?
Yeah, yes. Yep. He's progressing very well. So it sounds like he'll be back on the field. Yeah.
Holy shit.
So yeah, that definitely puts a damper on Travis Etienne. And then AJ Dillon is intriguing, but Aaron Jones is still there. And
he's the RB1 without question.
So J.K. Dobbins is the RB1 when he's there.
Well, okay, let's throw that at you. Okay, dynasty-wise, same thing. Same. If you're talking dynasty, same ranking, J.K. above those two guys.
That makes it tough. I would probably, if it's dynasty, throw AJ Dillon in front of him just because I think Aaron Jones is going to be gone after this year, and I think AJ Dillon's going to step in and be an absolute workhorse, and I think you'll still get production from him this season as well. We'll talk about him more on Thursday's show when we break down the NFC North, but I think in dynasty, I'd go Dillon, Dobbins, Etienne. Etienne, I think, is third for me. I need to see more from Jacksonville before I'm willing to commit.
That's the thing. Is it going to be Jacksonville that ends up holding him back? Plus now Doug Peterson there, which I think is going to help Trevor Lawrence tremendously. But what we also know about Doug Peterson is he likes to throw the ball. He was a quarterback in the NFL. He likes to throw the ball. That's shit. Nick Foles is throwing for 500 yards in a Super Bowl. So that's the other thing, the other downside with ETN, I think. You mentioned two other guys, or the two guys, Lamar and Mark Andrews. I've actually got questions on both of them. I'll start off with the QB, assuming he gets a deal done, a long-term deal. Do you prefer him or Burrow in dynasty? Obviously, the longevity is potentially an issue with Lamar, and Burrow's going to probably have a 10-year. He's got 10 years left at least, if not, probably could be 12 years left. Where Lamar, does he even have another? Does he get you to 2030? Probably not.
Yeah.
So he may have 6 years left or something. Is that? I mean, obviously, there's the massive upside of Lamar, like you mentioned, with his legs that Burrow doesn't offer. But the longevity piece and knowing that Burrow is still a boss. Which one do you lean on for dynasty if you're picking today?
Man, I think for me, it depends on what my team makeup is. If I'm in it right now where I'm like, all right, this is my year. I've got like a nice 3-year window right now. I'm going Lamar just because he can be an absolute game changer with his legs, where Burrow's still going to be up there, but he's not going to be, if they both play a full season, I expect Lamar to finish ahead of Joe Burrow every time, just with Lamar's rushing ability. I mean, that's pretty much a cheat code. You've got a quarterback and a running back that you get to plug into one spot, where you don't have that necessarily with Joe Burrow. But again, if I am maybe it could compete this year, but my windows may be more 3-4 years out right now. If you're in one of the campus to Canton leagues where maybe you've got some stud college guys that are on your roster, but they're not going to be coming out and you can move up to your team for another couple of years. I think I'd rather have Joe Burrow just because, like you said, he's going to be playing for a long time. Lamar too has been somewhat injury prone the last couple of years where you take that gamble with the mobile quarterback like that. So I think that's kind of where I would sit with it. If I'm in it and looking to win a championship this year, it's Lamar for me. Otherwise, it's Joe Burrow.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. Same thoughts there. So I like that. Mark Andrews, obviously a stud, had a ridiculous season last year, but Kelsey also has Mahomes, and he's been kind of regarded as the tight end one overall for, the last however many years. Ultimately, another dynasty question for you. Which of those two would you rather have? Kelsey's 32, Mark Andrews is 26.
Yeah, it's Mark Andrews for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I expect Kelsey to finish ahead of him this year, but it wouldn't surprise me if you start to see Mark Andrews after this season surpassing Kelsey. We should start to probably see that drop off here in the next year or two from Kelsey, but Kelsey right now, it's looking obviously good for him. Tyreek Hill left, and he's got the familiarity with Patrick Mahomes. So I expect Kelsey to have a monster season, barring both him and Mahomes being able to stay healthy this year.
Yeah, you don't really see tight ends playing. I mean, we saw Gronk, I think, played 9 years before he retired the first time. So this is generally when tight ends kind of start falling off. So I'm gonna be right there with you and go Mark Andrews.
Yep. Baltimore, the only thing we haven't talked about right now, Joe, is the wide receiver room, and that's where I wanted to throw it off.
Trying to push that off because I've got frickin' Bateman, and now
that's
I don't know what to think.
You're the resident expert. Have him on your dynasty team, and obviously Marquise Hollywood Brown's gone, traded him to Arizona. Rashad Bateman steps into that wide receiver one role, but historically Lamar hasn't done well in regards to producing relevant wide receivers, or at least consistent wide receivers. So Rashad Bateman at times last year looked okay, I guess, for a rookie. He missed some time at the beginning of the year, so I think that hindered him for his season. But is this a year we finally see a Baltimore wide receiver that's relevant you can plug into your lineup? Or is he somebody that you're taking a shot on maybe late in drafts if he falls, just as a maybe this works out, and if it doesn't, I'm not going to get burned by drafting him super early?
I was hoping you weren't going to ask.
No, that was one I had circled because I don't know what to do.
I wrote it down too. If I'm picking between a Rashad Bateman and an Elijah Moore, I'm taking Elijah Moore.
Yeah, I would too.
And that's even with the QB situation of Zach Wilson. We saw some really high-end production from Moore last year. Yeah, Bateman, like you said, had a few weeks, but Lamar is kind of, it's a wild card of Lamar and Greg Roman's offense. We saw Greg Roman's offense when he was in San Francisco. What was Kaepernick doing? I mean, it was a lot of stuff on the ground, and Baltimore's doing the same thing that fits Lamar's skill set. That whole offense is built around the run game. And partially what makes Bateman a great option for them is because he is a strong run blocker. So he fits that offense as well. But there's just I just think there's a ceiling on him. And there is no, like you said, there is no guarantee week to week. Yeah, we saw Hollywood Brown have some weeks where he would go off, get a few deep balls. But Bateman's not that same type of speed receiver that Hollywood is. So that hurts that big play ability. And so therefore, are you going to really have those boom bust types of weeks that at least you got those types of weeks out of Hollywood? I don't think so. So I just think that the ceiling is limited here for Bateman, and it has nothing to do with his talent as a receiver. It's just the offense that Baltimore runs, and I don't know. I'm not super high on him. I think he ends up finishing as a wide receiver 30, 35, maybe even lower than that. So not high on him really at all.
So I think I know what way you would lean in this question. For redrafts, would you rather have Rashad Bateman or Brandon Cooks?
I gotta go Cooks. I mean, just because we've seen it. Yeah, he's also limited being that he's on the Texans, but
Yeah.
he still ends up finishing the year surprisingly high. It feels like every year. And he didn't have any concussion issues last year, which is what really hindered him in previous years. So not saying that he's over that, but obviously every year the NFL continues to emphasize no hits to the head, no hits to the head, no hits to the head. So hopefully that's helping Cooks in his longevity. But so I guess I'm going Cooks. I don't want either of them, but
Right.
I'll take Cooks over Bateman here.
Sounds good. Moving on to the last team in the AFC North, and this is one I kind of wanted to avoid as well because I'm not sure what to do with it because this whole team revolves around the Deshaun Watson potential suspension, and we don't have any information at this time on how long that's going to be. Guys I do like regardless, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, I think those guys are staples in your lineup, going to absolutely ball out regardless of who that quarterback is there. But what do you do with Amari Cooper, with David Njoku, Deshaun Watson? I mean, is Deshaun somebody that you're potentially taking a shot on if you're drafting right now with no news in hopes that maybe it's a 4-game suspension, maybe it's a 6-game, and you can still have him for a good chunk of the season?
I personally am not touching him. I mean, because I would be pissed off every time that I looked at my roster because I think he's just a real piece of shit. So he's untouchable for me. As far as other players that surround that QB position, I mean, Amari Cooper. Okay, what do you do, Amari Cooper, Brandon Cooks? Because I'm gonna take the risk. I'm gonna risk it for the biscuit and go Cooper there.
Yeah, I am too. Because if Deshaun is only out 4 to 6 games, I think Cooper still finishes ahead of Brandon Cooks. I think he'll scrape by for those first few weeks and then should ball out. But I guess going back to Deshaun too, if once he does come back, do you think it's going to take him a while to get back into game shape? He
hasn't played football in 2 years.
Yeah. So do you see quite a bit of rust where maybe this season is almost just a throwout year for him? Or what do you
think it might as well just be a wash. I think maybe he'll shock us, but he didn't play all last season, not even because of these allegations, because he chose to sit out.
Yeah.
I'm not high. I'm not a Deshaun fan at all this year. Rust, who knows? I mean, he's still, he's just obviously a natural talent, and maybe he can. But you're right. If you're not seeing game time for this long, it's going to take a little bit longer to kind of get back to understanding the speed of the game, because it is so much faster than every other level of football. So. Yeah, maybe. I mean, if it is only a 4-game suspension, I'd say it probably takes him 3-4 games to get back up to speed. So maybe there is some relevance there for the back half of the season. But if it's a 12-gamer, I'm not interested at all.
Yeah.
Because I think it could take him another 4 weeks, 3-4 weeks to get going again.
So if you do have a later draft, let's say you're drafting end of August, beginning of September, right before the season, we should know what that suspension is. So let's say it's, I don't know, a bad scenario where it's a 12-game suspension. You're not going to have Deshaun for that. You're rolling Jacoby Beef Brisket out there. Are you out on Amari Cooper then, and any of the other passing options? Where do you sit there, I guess?
I mean, no, I'm still in on Amari Cooper. I'm not saying that he's a super high-end guy. He's probably finishes around that wide receiver 20 spot, but that puts you as a wide receiver 2. And maybe he doesn't, maybe I'd obviously much rather have him as a flex option just because maybe Brissett is just garbage and therefore Amari Cooper's garbage. But, and he, if he ends up being Allen Robinson of last year, which is totally possible if smoked brisket is smoked brisket is in there, totally possible. And Allen Robinson was one of the bigger disappointments in all of football last year. So taking a risk, I guess I wouldn't want him as my wide receiver too. Much rather have him as a flex option, but he's a flex option. I think a steady flex option.
Yep, I agree completely. Spoiler alert, he's actually in one of my top 3 fantasy targets right now. He is going in the 603 spot. So that's definitely a flex worthy spot. So I think that's a perfect spot for Amari Cooper, and definitely somebody I'm targeting in my drafts based on that ADP. Before I jump into my other top guys, I've got 2 more to throw out at you. Guy you've been high on in the past, Joe, have to bring it up. Any interest in David Njoku? Is finally going to be the tight end there with Hooper moving on. Are you in?
I could not believe that they gave him that contract extension that they did, because he hasn't done shit on the field.
Yeah,
I'm not drafting him. I need to see it.
Yeah,
I need to see it first with him, because it's like every single damn year. It's like, oh, is this going to be the year that he finally breaks out? And he never does.
Yeah.
They go and give him this extension, and of course the Browns do it and overpay for a mediocre tight end. Of course it's the Browns that do it. But I mean, again, it feels like the talent's there, but we don't know. Again, we don't know the QB situation. Smoked brisket isn't going to make me think any higher than Njoku. So yeah, I'm not touching him. I'll look at streaming him on, during bye weeks, similar to the Hayden Hurst situation that we were talking about, but I'm not drafting him. I'm not wasting a roster spot on him all season long. Or a draft pick on him.
Nope, I'm not either. Other 2 guys to go along with Amari Cooper that I am trying to walk away from my drafts with, Mark Andrews. He's going in the 301 spot, which I think is a perfect spot for him. 301, that's on the turn if you're drafting first overall, so you can get a Jonathan Taylor, maybe snag another running back or wide receiver, grab Mark Andrews in there. And obviously Mark Andrews is going to put up a ton of touchdowns, is great for even just targets. I mean, it's not one of those tight ends that's getting 3 catches, 50 yards and a touchdown. He's got 8 or 9 grabs usually and getting a ton especially for PPR as well. And then Deontay Johnson's going in the 408 spot.
Big point, or great point there on the PPR piece, because he is good for 8-9 a week, close to 80, 90 yards and probably a half touchdown a week. So really, really awesome production.
Yep. And then Deontay Johnson going in the 408 spot. Still like Deontay Johnson, like you'd mentioned, in a contract year. I think he's going to be a nice safety blanket for whoever wins that quarterback battle. So I like him in that mid to late 4th round too.
Yeah, 3 of the guys I really like. We already touched on Mark Andrews. I had him written down as, guy's a monster, and he's in, again, that perfect system with and a quarterback that loves throwing the ball up the middle of the field, and he's the beneficiary of that. So absolutely, Mark Andrews is a guy to target. I'm going to go in. We're on to Cincinnati and go T Higgins here.
Yeah,
he's been climbing up some of these draft boards to a point that I didn't know if he'd reach. I think we all saw the talent at Clemson for him, but the question was always that Cincinnati offense and can they support, both him and Jamar Chase? And he's shown that, Burrow's that guy that absolutely can. So, he was able to do it at LSU with Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. So absolutely he can do it in Cincinnati. And I've got T Higgins as, a top finishing, probably borderline top 10 amongst wide receivers. So if I'm looking at T Higgins and AJ Brown, I think I'm leaning T Higgins here, just knowing that that's probably a toss up. That's probably, again, right at that borderline top 10 finish. amongst wide receivers, but just the QB situation. I love Higgins here, and the talent is immense. He showed that he can be not only a red zone threat, but also in the middle of the field. So I'm digging him big time. And staying in Cincinnati, Joe Mixon, no injury issues last year. Obviously, that's an up. That's a positive note. And Chris Evans is not a guy that he needs to really worry about when it comes to playing time. So, he's going to be an every down back, 3 down back like we saw last year and like we've seen in a number of years in the past. So when healthy, he's obvious, just always a really high end running back. So definitely targeting him as well.
Yep. All right, that will wrap up this episode. We'll be back on Thursday. We can be found at Dead Arm Sports, Twitter, Instagram. Check us out on Facebook at Dead Arm Sports. Again, we do go live on YouTube, usually at the beginning of the week on Monday or Tuesday. So make sure you subscribe, click the bell there. You'll get to know when our new episode drops. That way you can ask us any questions that you want. Got that chat up and monitor it throughout the episode. Subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on your favorite listening platform. Send us a screenshot, get you some sticker swag sent out in the mail. If you want to follow Gel, he can be found at Das Gel. I can be found at Das JPEG. Give us both a follow and follow us at Dead Arm Sports. So make sure you go and do that before you go to bed tonight. Greatly appreciate it. And Gel, where can they find us at for listening?
Hit us up on our presenting sponsor Anchor, both available on the web and via the app. Apple App Store, Google Play, just search Anchor. If you're looking on the web, just hit holy shit.
You can do it, buddy.
Anchor.fm. Just leave it at that. Anchor.fm. They listed it, do all of our publishing, editing, and presenting to you for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Google Pods. Again, as Josh said, we are currently live on YouTube, so make sure to subscribe to our YouTube feed. Just type in Dead Arm Sports. Our channel will be at the top of your search bar, and hit that subscribe button, hit the alert button, hit that bell,
ding,
and we will love you forever.
All right, again, that will do it. We will be back on Thursday. Have a big episode planned for you. Going to hit the NFC North, Gel and I's bread and butter with both our favorite teams residing in that division. Going to talk a little Rocket Mortgage Classic and have a little fun game for you. We're going to talk about some mediocre quarterbacks and over-unders on how many games they're going to start the rest of their career. So should be a good time. Should be some fun conversation from that. Again, appreciate everybody out there listening. Make sure you subscribe on your favorite listening platform. Go check out our YouTube page. All of our previous episodes are up on there, and you can find them on all of our listening platforms as well. Joe, close us out.
Hump day!